Hello and welcome. We are the Crystal Men. That is the name of our podcast.
And let just jump in with your gem Sona.
Oh, I am I forget that name. I am Gray Anisite.
Yeah. See, I'm easy. I'm Jade. But yes, I'm Tom, and
I'm Jim, and this is believe it or not, this is a Steven Universe rewatch podcast.
Woo!
Where we rewatch episodes of Steven Universe, a series that we both enjoy very much, and we talk about it.
Got my LaCroix in hand, sponsored by LaCroix.
I got my Corona Extra in hand, sponsored by Coronavirus. I mean, Corona Beer.
Yeah. Get all 19.
We can say that now because there's no one listening.
Hey. Yeah.
So, do you want to tell our listeners which episode we watched today?
Yes, we watched the episode Frybo, which is the 5th episode of the first season of Steven Universe. And I gotta say, especially compared to the last couple of episodes, this one didn't do much for me. Did not do much for me. I
kind of agree. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think I might have enjoyed it more than you, but it also, it kind of starting to veer off into that thing that Steven likes to do, where it likes to push aside the interesting gem stuff and really just focus on characters and character stories.
Yeah, and that's all well and good, but this is definitely an episode where, if you're trying to gut the series to watch, all of the important episodes, I definitely would not put this on the list.
I'm going to fight you a little bit on that, because I think that this episode brings up a lot of really important things that come up later on. And I know you're like, what could possibly be important? Because, obviously none of the characters are. Ronaldo, the Frymans, even Lars. You could say Lars is a pretty unimportant character for most of the series.
Yeah, really, until the later
But here's
episodes.
my argument. So, there's a part where Pearl, early on, is explaining this gem shard to Steven and how dangerous it is. And Steven, his eyes separate, and he just completely drones off and doesn't pay attention. No. Basically, what this is this is a prelude to the cluster. She even explains in the end, if you catch the end bit, she says something about not being able to control this. It will become a monster. And this is basically the same idea we see with the forced fused gem shards, where there's all these shattered gems that have a little bit of personhood, or they have a little bit of sentience left.
Yeah.
And they're used for weird menial things. Pearl even says, didn't you hear my what I was telling you about using these gem shards as living armors and infantry?
Okay, so I suppose...
other than that, sorry.
No, you're right. Go ahead.
But other than that, it really is not that's the only thing. It's just this little seeding foreshadowing element of future cluster stuff. That's interesting.
So maybe the first minute of the episode. Now, and don't get me wrong, even a bad episode is still not that this is bad, but I mean a non-plot filled episode is still entertaining.
For sure.
And I mean, all right, so yeah, plot. So Pearl has lost some gem shards, and was asking Steven if he saw them, but Steven was looking for his pants, because that's just the kind of boy he be.
Because he's fucking stupid.
Yeah, these early episodes, man. Whew, he's a dumb boy.
He really feels like someone drilled into his brain.
Yeah,
he can't even pay attention in a basic conversation.
I'm very intrigued to see when you start to notice that switch off. But so he doesn't pay attention to anything Pearl says, and instead he hits the town for his pants. And then he meets up with when does he get his pants? They're walking on their own.
Yeah, he gets his pants actually in the temple still. He finds them right after Pearl leaves. So he just grabs them, and then that's when he notices that the gem animates clothing.
Yes,
and he puts it in a sock.
Because
not clothing.
not at all clothing. Yeah, and then then he goes to leave to look for Pearl.
And then just easily gets sidetracked because he's Steven.
Steven. But and then he sees P.D. Fryman, whose name you reminded me of. And he has to do some shitty Fryman job. And Steven is like, dude, don't. And so he had to wear the costume, the Frybo costume. Steven says, I have an idea. And
so at first he just goes in the suit. Like, why? Steven is such a weird character in this episode.
He is. He's very extra this episode.
His initial way to solve the problem of PB, like PB literally says, if only there was a way for this costume to just work on its own without me having to be in it. And then Steven puts himself in the costume. And then of course gets attacked by seagulls, so then he gets out. And then he's like, oh, I have a bright idea. I'm gonna use like the magic thing that's just in my back pocket. And bring this Frybo to life.
Which also, once again, brings up the question that I have. How aware are the Beach City characters of all this magic crap? Because, like, Petey doesn't seem that startled by it.
No, if anything, it's not until, like, the suit goes berserk near the end. So that's another thing. The father still thinks that PB is in the suit when he's, like strangling and like using tentacles on everyone, French fry tentacles. So I don't know. I think you're nailing something here with like how what is normal for the people of this world.
That's what drives me crazy. What is normal? Like, oh, I'm commuting to work, but the bus was derailed by a magic monster blast. Like, is that the normal, or is that Beach City normal? And the rest of the world would be like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, as it stands, these are the only gems on Earth right now, besides corrupted gems, right?
Yep.
So, the big mystery. But who's to say? And then, so Frybo starts out okay, and then starts misinterpreting commands and going a little haywire, especially when they said, feed people fries. And dear Lord, Frybo is that frightens me. I don't know, like
It's really well designed to be a very creepy looking thing. Like from the initial time we see him, and the face doesn't change, which I think is really cool. Like the only thing that changes are he gets these weird French fry legs, which are creepy, and I like how Steven and PB are both repulsed by it. And also we start seeing these really weird veins around it, which they're kind of just like cherry on top. Just like you already have a creepy design, add a bunch of veins to make it look really creepy.
Yeah, they just went ham with it. They were definitely having fun, but for some reason that just gets me right in the creepy vibe. Like more so than like skulls and stuff like that. I don't like I don't like kid stuff that is not kiddie.
Mm-hmm.
Like creeps me out.
It really nails like this. I think a lot of early Steven does. What I think is probably one of the most interesting things about season 1 is this really off-putting vibe that a lot of the things like intentionally do. Like a lot of the scenes in like the second episode with with Greg being introduced, like there's this kind of weird ominous feel of this giant like gem monster is going to be like attacking the planet. And of course there's a lot of comedy in the show, but this is another thing too where and the next episode I looked ahead, the next one is the cat fingers one.
Oh god.
They really did a good job at handling like really creative horror scenarios, I think.
Yeah.
In like a fun way.
And that's an interesting point too, because right now Steven's going through this stuff like it's just a Tuesday for him, but in future when he talks about childhood trauma, like a lot of the flashbacks were of these early episodes where he can't control his body transforming into cats, or
seeing horrible things happening around him that he's powerless to stop.
Yeah, so it's interesting that it winds up having a very long-term effect on him, but the episodes right now are kind of playing it off as just not comedy, but just the norm,
Yeah, and it really works well, especially I think a lot of I'd seen, I don't want to say a lot of people, but I feel like I saw people critiquing that episode of Steven Universe Future, saying like, oh, it's ridiculous that we're now supposed to be looking back at like all these fun adventures Steven had, and how they're all supposed to be um like trauma inducing. But then when you look at an episode like this, the tone initially is like silly and funny, but the setting is like really bleak. Like it's like a rainy day. The events that happen are pretty scary, and like of course Steven uses his funny unconventional ways to combat it, but I feel like it's not easy to go back and say like, oh, look at this fun adventure Steven had.
Yeah, and I like going through the lens of that now has really highlighted that for me as well. Like I see, like I disagree with that sentiment if that those people have in that they they have Steven reacting like you said in a funny way, but that's just because that's how he knows how to react right
Yeah.
now. I think if you're looking at like the traumatic aspect of it, yeah, a lot like especially next episode, um, in the sense that like it's body horror, you know?
Yeah. And it's like a very much a thing that he cannot control, which is really fun. I love me some
Yeah.
body horror. Body horror is like one of my favorite subgenres of horror, so I'm super excited for that one.
Oof, I do not like body horror. Body horror skeeves me. And it's interesting that like the gems really like more with the Steven centric stuff as opposed to the monsters they can fight, but they can't really help Steven out early on either because they don't know what the heck's going on with him. Like
Yeah, they're just not equipped to deal with human emotion, and like the
biology and
gems, like them, as long as they're not shattered, they're fine. Like they can come back and heal. Well, I guess that's not entirely true. We do see volleyball. Volleyball is like permanently scarred,
yeah.
but she's the only character that we see is permanently scarred. So we have to assume that's like a super minority of gems that get like permanent
Yeah. Plus that
adverse
was from
effects.
a diamond,
Yeah.
like so it yeah, it's definitely interesting and I think you know Steven could absolutely process this stuff negatively later. Um but anyway, back to the episode. So yeah, Pearl comes after things start hitting the fan. And it's interesting that it was only Pearl this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really this was like
I think it's the first one where it's
I
only
think
one
so.
gem.
There's very few episodes where like the other gems don't at least make like a second cameo.
Yeah.
But she tries to fight it. She gets a big old squirt of ketchup to the face. Ugh.
Which I
Um,
really enjoy. I think that's a really fun, like, they do a lot of fun stuff with, like, Frybo being, like, a French fry based, like, fast food,
yeah,
monster. It's funny. It's fun.
and they also do like fun ways of letting Steven shine in fights early on too. Because I mean, like
Mm.
the gems should just be able to handle this stuff willy nilly, but it's always like some silly reason that Steven has to kind of save the day at the end.
Yeah, Pearl gets jobbed out in a really funny way. Like, oh, ketchup in her eyes. Like, really?
Yeah,
Pearl, of all people, like, this gem warrior that's been a warrior for, like, thousands and thousands of years gets ketchup in her eyes, completely incapacitates her.
yeah,
That's funny.
done. um, but yeah, and then Petey and his dad have a moment when he was trying to defend his dad and telling his true feelings about being a Fryman.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't really talk about PD's arc yet. So his whole thing in this episode is like being forced to do the job. Then he's like, "Oh no, I miss being a kid. I don't want to do this stupid job." Then he realizes that he actually wants a job, so he wants a purpose. It's just not this like stupid wearing your mascot costume and running
Yeah,
around all sweaty.
he wants to feel important, which is interesting too because it kind of foils Steven in the sense that like Petey's expressing, hey, like it's time to start growing up a bit, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's really funny, especially returning to this. I remember when I first started watching Steven, obviously I was watching it in order. I thought that because we saw the Mr. Fryman in the last episode is, or was the last one, or was it Gem? No, we see him in the the laser cannon, laser light
Yeah,
cannon.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I was under the impression that like, and PD has like a really important arc in this episode about like childhood, and he seems like he's around the same age of Steven. So my idea was like, oh, is PD going to be like a recurring character and like an important character? And
Yeah, they absolutely had the chance, and decided to. We're only gonna put him in like 4 episodes.
I think you might be right. Like at least a starring role. Like I know that
Yeah,
he's at least given something way later into Steven Universe. I think he's kind of given the spotlight in an episode, but
yeah,
also another thing I wanted to point out now that we're talking about like the town folk. First time we see Ronaldo in this episode, first time we see Petey, first time we see all of the teens, the teen group that
yes, yeah, that's true.
become characters later, and it was really funny because I could have sworn that I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy that voices Sour Cream is a guy that's done like a million voices and a million things, and he's been an actor forever. It didn't sound like him, so I wonder if they hadn't gotten him for that role yet. Uh,
Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna look that up right now.
this
Uh,
is just me like looking too deeply into this.
no, but that is interesting. I really enjoy the teens actually, and I'll wait until we get to the episode that's focused on them to really talk about it more.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
um,
No, they're fun characters.
voice actor.
Um,
How do you say his last name? Brian
Posehn. It's
Post.
Brian Posehn.
No, yeah, they didn't say that he had any other voice actor before him, so maybe
Oh, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just whatever.
stupid.
um, let me think. So, did we wrap it up? So, like, Steven ends up using the gem. So Pearl drops the gem shards, and then he uses the gem shards as his allies, which is another thing that I was like, this is the first time that we see Steven like working with the not quite the cluster, but we see that Steven is like sympathetic to these gem shards and he's able to cooperate with them in a way that Pearl did not anticipate because Pearl's whole thing was containment.
Yeah,
And
well,
yeah,
Steven just has his own unique way of handling these kinds of things.
and
Sorry.
it's kind of cool because it's like the whole idea of Pearl saying, "This is forbidden. Don't do this. Like, don't let the gems touch any garment, any clothing." And Steven's way to beat it is by doing that thing, but just understanding how to do it properly.
Yeah.
Or, like taking control of it. So, which is definitely a thing that we see Steven do a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, he as a character, kind of like personifies change for the gems. I mean,
Yeah.
they're so set in their ways, and then everything Steven does just changes the norm for them. And this is just a very, very small example of it, of course, but like, it's just interesting to see that yes, Steven's methods are usually go against the grain.
Yeah, and it just shows how deeply those ideas are into the series' DNA. Like, even in this just one episode example, we have things that may totally track for Steven's character, like seasons and seasons down the line.
Yeah, he very much stays true to his character, which I always enjoy. Um, obviously there's debatable moments, but we'll get into those later.
Yeah, for sure.
I
For sure.
always want to talk about later episodes.
That's like the double-edged sword with this is like I really love that we're revisiting each episode, but at the same time it's like, damn, I really want to talk about like this episode or like fusions aren't even a thing yet. Like how is that even possible?
God. But you know what? It's good to go episode by episode for now to really kind of get like an in-depth look.
Yeah, I really love that. It's like I'm savoring it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I never watch anything like this anymore. I always watch things like I like crazily binge things. Like
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the culture of show watching right now is to binge, but you
yeah,
do miss out on so many small details that would otherwise make you really appreciate it. So
yeah.
it's unfortunate. I mean, geez, you know, Steven Universe obviously isn't the only show that has like a ton of background details and things like that, but Meanwhile, I'm like, I need to watch 8 episodes today.
I know that when I started watching it, or like when because I what I did was I watched it like a bit as it was coming out, and then I ended up rewatching it again. But that was only up till like season one. And I remember when I was on that rewatch, I was fucking plowing through. I was like, damn, give me more of that Steven,
Num, 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 num.
rubbing my hands together, crouching up towards more Steven episodes.
Oh God. Yeah, no, so it's good, but it's agonizing to not be able to talk about things.
Yeah.
Oh, and just for the hug counter, definitively no hugs today.
Yes. Yeah, also no crying from Steven.
Yes, no crying from Steven.
Which again, I feel like I should just stop this list because I thought it was gonna be easy. I thought it was gonna be every episode, just another check into the Stephen Cry counter, but nope.
But I mean, you also got to think like 5 episodes is 2 episodes of like a regular 30-minute show, you know?
That's true.
So we're not very far in at all. So
That's very true.
I think there's definitely probably a lot of crying during the span of everything. Just like I hope there's more hugs.
I'm sure there are.
Mm.
Um. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh yeah. Just to like recap, like finish the episode. So yeah, Steven, he uses the gems, the gem shards, the animated clothing. That's how he wins, and then he also shoots his underwear off, which is a really funny gag. I really like that. And then they do a Viking funeral for Frybo's.
Yeah, yeah, which I love because
Yeah,
why?
it's
Why
really
did
good.
Ugh, Frybo. You know what? He deserved no ceremony. I think he should just be burned at the stake.
It's one of those things like what would they do besides get rid of it? Like completely just burn it. Like there's no way that they could keep this thing around and not be like completely freaked out by it all the time.
Oh God, yeah. But I mean, and then uh Mr. Fryman and PD reconcile, and it's really nice father son moment that Steven did not have with his dad.
Nope. Yeah. Which is it's funny to like as you said like PD kind of works as a foil against Steven. And in that way too, yeah, like we see Mr. Fryman his like early on he's being a little adversarial unintentionally to his son.
Yeah.
And then realizes oh this is how we fix it where in Steven and Greg there are so many problems there but Greg refuses to acknowledge them and Steven doesn't know they exist at this point. So it's like they're both
Yeah.
too immature to deal with it, whereas we see PD and his dad be pretty mature,
Oh yeah, yeah.
emotionally mature.
Once they discuss openly, but that's a great point. I mean, yeah, Steven legitimately doesn't see any problem at this point. I'm sure. Um, it's not until much later, but yeah, Greg's character is very interesting in that regard because he is a child. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, it's just they really could have taken this somewhere with with the Frymans, but they just I don't know why they just decided to kind of against it.
Yeah, it's almost like they after this episode they were like, "Oh yeah, that's enough." Like, PD and his dad like totally done character development. We did it. We're all good here. Whereas Ronaldo becomes like way more important than either of those characters, which I would not have intended. I always thought Ronaldo was just going to be like a
A
background
one-off
joke
gag
character,
character, yeah.
but he gets like a few episodes of highlight.
He gets
Uh,
he gets more episodes than Petey.
yeah, which I honestly really like. I think Ronaldo is a really fun character. He's obviously very hated,
Oh yeah,
for good reason, but that's why he's a fun character. I think.
yeah, and they wanted to make him a hateable character.
And I also like how they use him as like a mirror of the fan base. Like there's one episode way later on where he shows Steven like a screenshot of his phone and he's on like message boards. And it's all because his whole thing is conspiracies about the snake people.
Yeah,
And it's like the same like kind of shit you'd see from like a Steven Universe fan post. But instead it's just all snake people references.
and it is funny too because he's the first one to even talk about the Diamond Authority too.
Mm-hmm.
Like once Steven disproves the snake people for him, uh, so you know to gag on the fans guessing instantly the big twists of everything. But it's like you're throwing off at the dartboard and something's gonna stick.
Yeah, I don't want to say this again because I think I said it once before, but there's this whole idea where like when you have enough people on the internet theorizing over something, eventually someone's going to get it right. Everyone else is going to notice that that's the right answer, and then people are just going to be like, okay, this is the theory. Like this is the everything but confirmed theory.
Yeah, just because one person had a
Had a brain blast.
had a brain blast, had a good old Jimmy Neutron brain blast. Wow, I did not have a brain blast. Um, yeah, there's not too much more to talk about this episode, is there?
No, I have a couple like scattered thoughts.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna tackle them from most interesting to least interesting. So, actually, most relevantly, we also some person I didn't mention. We see Mr. Smiley for the first time, uh, which I was like, oh wow, he was from way early on.
Is this the first time we see him?
I think so. We didn't see Mr. Smiley because we hadn't really seen any background characters besides Mr. Fryman until this episode, and now it's like we get a ton,
I guess
and it
you're
really
right.
makes the town feel like a little bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Smiley is a character that I don't like very much. I think he's kind of annoying.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like he's just there's no real redeeming qualities to him, but
Also, he's featured in one of the worst episodes. What is it, Future Boy Zoltan? I really hated that one.
oh my god, that episode, I just didn't care.
Yeah, I think I didn't hate it. I don't think I've ever felt like actual anger towards Steven Universe in that way, but yeah, it'll be fun to get to that episode and be like, wow, I don't like it.
Yeah, wow, this episode sucks.
No, thank you.
Oh, and a quick note too. At the very end, Steven stayed naked the whole time.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I forgot. Really weird. I think it's the weirdest part about it is that the Frymans don't say anything about it.
Yeah,
They just let it be.
but at this at this mascot funeral,
It is really creepy to me that Steven is like naked. Like that we see so much almost naked Steven. I really hate it actually.
yeah. Well, and like we find out that like at this point he's like 13.
That makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
He should be so much more mature and like not okay. This is not okay, Steven.
Yeah, it's not okay. Like
If you're like 8, then I could understand maybe like, oh, he's so innocent and young, he doesn't quite get it. But
that's the thing. Like early on, they play him off as a very young character. Like it's not until the episode where it's his birthday that you find out that he's like turning 14, and you're like,
Jesus, Steven,
like
grow
what
up.
the fuck? Yeah, like because like
I know that's supposed to be the point, but
yeah, but I mean like because he banks off the cute factor for a lot of the earlier stuff. So yeah, I mean it's the whole point, but it's just very interesting that he's a 13-year-old running around Beach City completely nude.
ugh, creepy. Okay, a few other things I saw. Oh, this is just something that a connection that I made. Sorry.
No, go for it.
I really like it kind of reminded me of Kill la Kill. Kill la Kill. Have you ever seen or heard of that anime?
Oh, yeah. I mean, who hasn't?
It's just kind of funny because the whole thing about like the clothing having like its own sentience and the clothing moving by itself reminded me of like life fibers and that stuff with Kill la Kill. It's a really tenuous connection. It's just something that came to my head.
Yeah, it just pops up. There's definitely references. There was I all right. This is gonna be weird, but do you remember Bobo?
I was gonna bring this up.
Oh, you were?
Oh my god, I'm so happy. Yeah, explain it. Yeah, yes, I remember Bo.
Yeah, because the Jelly Jiggler.
Thank you. I'm so happy that you noticed that.
Yeah, yeah.
Down.
I was like, huh, that brings back some.
Oh my god, I have like such. It was like a show that I had only seen a few episodes of when I was like way younger, and it was like something you like hear about in hushed voices, like. But yeah, I thought it was fucking funny. And when they had Jelly Jiggler, Steven's on the Jelly Jiggler ride in this, I was like,
It's
oh my
like,
god, is that our first anime reference in Steven
yeah.
Universe?
I was like, oh my god, it will be the first of many. There's a lot of Steven anime references.
Yeah, there are a lot of really awesome ones too.
Yeah, yeah, like ones that you wouldn't expect, past like the Gurren Lagann.
Yeah, I'm excited for the. I keep saying it, like the Do It For Her episode, fun Utna references.
Mm.
There's a Pizza Evangelion reference, which is really funny. Uh, yeah, looking forward to hitting all those up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I
But
think that's it for all my like. Oh, okay. This is as I said, like I'm going from like my most relevant to least relevant observations.
go for it.
They play the same exact door opening creaking sound effect twice, and this is something that like it's kind of like the Wilhelm scream. Like, are you familiar with that? Like
Yeah, yeah,
the stupid
the
Wilhelm
iconic
scream.
screams.
Yeah, and it's like where when you notice it, it's like funny. Yeah, it's like it's funny when you first notice it, but then when you hear it everywhere, it gets really grating, and then it gets like so infuriated. To me, I get so infuriated when I hear that noise now because it just feels like I don't know. It feels like a joke that it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
So
it's
please stop
old.
doing it.
And
So yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
but so to connect to that, there is a sound of a door creaking open. I will not edit it here because I don't have that much will to edit. But it is like you've heard it a million times, dear viewer and Tom. Like you've heard it a million times in everything. It's the same exact like creaky door open. Let me try and find it on. I'll just play it off YouTube.
Yeah.
It sucks, and I heard it twice in this episode. Both times when Fryman opened the door, and it made me mad.
Is it like the?
Yes. Hold on, I'll play it 1 second.
Yeah.
I guarantee if I type in creaky door sound effect, it will be like the first one. Door opening sound effect. Let's see. Oh wait, no, this is actually good.
Yeah, that's a
Oops.
straight door.
All right, let's see this one. It might be it.
Did you do creepy door?
No, these are good. It's like actually, I think it's like a fence gate.
I know, but I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the high pitched creepy one that. All right.
Yeah, it fucking sucks. Here, I'll
It's
try one more. Wait, no. Damn, this is gonna be a weird podcast to listen to.
please watch and listen to
Everyone who's listening on headphones is gonna be like constantly turning around like every 3 seconds to see if the door behind them is open. All right, I'm giving up. It's totally against my argument here that I can't even find the sound effect that I'm talking about.
But it's one of those like royalty free sound effects. You know, those don't bother me as much as the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah, that one's
because
just egregious.
that one's egregious and so obvious, and I don't mind like if a show plays it like as an obvious joke if it's a comedic show. I hate when you hear that scream in like a more serious movie or show.
Yeah,
Just because it totally takes you out of it. Like,
exactly. That's my biggest problem, even with this sound effect too. And I know it makes me sound like a snob, the fact that I can like recognize the sound effect, but I've heard it so many times to the point where it just sounds manufactured, and it sounds like they didn't even put any extra effort into putting it into like a sound editing program and changing it at all.
yeah,
You know
they're
what I
just
mean?
like, we got it.
Yeah, and I kind of hate that to say that, but it does take me out of it because it makes me go like, "Ugh, really?" And then like I got to get back invested in the shit.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's completely valid. I mean, uh, it's cutting corners in a sense. Like, I know it's a small hill to die on, and like it's a small corner to cut, but it like things like that do wind up taking you out when they're so just overused. I don't know.
Yeah. And then there's bastards like me that bring it up and ruin it for everyone else who doesn't notice it. It's kind of like an eldritch horror thing where it's like an evil that you don't know about. It's you're completely oblivious to, but when you know about the evil, you see it everywhere.
Everywhere. Oh God. Yeah. Well, let's play some creepy doors one more time, so people. I noticed that with laser sounds a lot, like space sounds,
Oh.
like hyperspace or like engines starting up, things like that. Like there's definitely a lot of stock sounds that I see like everywhere, and it really is like once you start to recognize it, it's everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's infuriating because then you just can't. It just that 1 second that like takes you out of something you're otherwise completely engrossed in.
Yeah, totally.
Mm. F.
F. Yeah, F in the chat.
Uh, yeah. I mean, any other points though?
That's really everything I've got. Like literally everything I've
Yeah. I mean, I am scraping the bottom of the barrel.
got. Other than this was like a decent episode.
Yeah.
Definitely not the best, definitely not the worst.
It's yeah, introduces and develops characters that we will see very little of. But you know, we got a little Steven action. I would give it like a B.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Like, it's funny because I'm trying to see if this is the worst one we've done so far, or if the one previous. And I think that okay, the last one was Together Breakfast.
Yeah, I think this is way worse than Together Breakfast myself.
You can make a much better case that Together Breakfast is like way more interesting, and it shows things that we haven't seen. This one has like interesting lore implications, but that's about it.
Yeah,
I mean, I like the horror too, but
I mean, Together Breakfast gives you the whole temple, which is interesting. And you know, different aspects like that. This one really just we know what a fry stand is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, actually, I do have one last thing to say. The song that plays when PB is thinking about how sad he is our theme song. It is a song that I use for our theme song. So
beautiful.
Until we have a funny custom one that we make, if we ever get around to that.
Actually, see, I want to like do it in person so we could have two instruments.
No, yeah, it'll be better. It'll be better if we do it in person, because then we won't have to worry about syncing it up over the internet.
Exactly. But yeah. Well, for now, sad PD.
Sad PD OST.
Iconic. If you don't know sad PD OST, get out. You're not a true Steven fan.
Hardly.
Yeah, well, unless there's anything else, this has been fun. I'm Tom.
And yeah, I've been Jim. Oh, sorry, I have a little bit of an outro I can do now.
Oh, do your outro, friend.
So, we are actually on podcast places now.
Oh, Bratzel.
So, you can listen to us currently. Hopefully, these more get added in the future. You can currently listen to us on Spotify, Pocket Cast, and Google Podcasts, along with other ones that no one has ever heard of, so I will not list them off.
Ooh, child.
We are also on YouTube. I am uploading the episodes on YouTube for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
It is a bit more of a hassle, so I might stop eventually.
So,
but yeah.
Just have all of your friends and family watch the YouTube if you want them to continue. By
Pretty
God,
much.
Get us to 10 million.
10 million? Yeah, very feasible.
10 million views on episode 5, Frybo.
That'd be freaky, dude.
I'd be like, oh.
You picked the wrong one, guys.
Yeah, I need a better mic and better jokes. Yeah. So we will see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. As I said before, join us next time, next week actually, when we talk about cat fingers. What's it called?
Wait, cat fingers. Wow, yes. Yeah, you nailed it. Cat fingers. Exciting. Be ready. Watch us.
Bye.
Bye.